welcome back to episode 15 of Garrison Talks. Are we on 15? It might be 16. I don't remember.
We are.
We're on one of those episodes. Welcome back. As always, I'm Adam. I'm joined here with David, Matt, and other Adam, Adam Knauff. How are you guys doing today? Tonight?
Good.
Doing well.
All right, so we're gonna go through Battle Forces today. Talk a little bit about all 6 of them because we're kind of Shadow Collective in this. Whatever opinions you have on that. But yeah, so
is it a faction? Is it a battle force? We don't know. It's a faction force.
Talk about it anyway. We'll just talk about it anyway.
They're in between.
So before we hop into that, for a little bit of housekeeping, I do believe this is going to be the second episode that we've got posted on the Legion Discord, which is always exciting. We're also going to have some more content rolling out there soon, because we should be able to get our blog posts up there and everything as well, which we've gotten a couple. I think we're starting back up again. And we've also got some extra YouTube videos up on there, hopefully soon. I know myself and Tyler recently just recorded one about Ventress, so hopefully we'll have that one up there before this one goes up.
We'll get them posted, and we'll feed you little content goblins, Just kidding. We're all kind of content goblins, aren't we?
Yeah. Matt, do you want to give a quick synopsis of what's going on with the Indie Open for everyone that has not listened before?
Yeah, so if you haven't listened before, you should be excited. We're doing a big 64-person event coming up in June. That'll be June 16th and 17th. We recently just wrote kind of a what to expect article. It kind of breaks down, if you're showing up, here's what to expect, what you'll need to bring, what you can kind of expect to play. We're going to play, 6 rounds, what that looks like. So if you want to know more information, go to our website. It's indianapolisgarrison.com. And you can check out the article there and read a little bit more. If you've got questions or you're really excited or you're really stoked, go ahead and reach out to us. We encourage anyone who's interested at this point to register. We do have 64 slots available, but those will fill up fast. So I think we're at 28 right now-ish. So spots are filling up. So if you are interested in keeping your spot, go ahead and register online. Tickets are refundable. So if you need to back out last minute or you need to, trade with a buddy or find a carpool or whatever it needs, let us know. And we're happy to be flexible with that. So
yeah,
that's my
spiel. It'd be great.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
It will.
Are you able to tell us any of the price support or anything for it just yet, or are we just going to lay that out over time?
Ooh, yeah. So actually, there is some of the price support already laid out in the article. So if you go to that article, you can kind of see that there's some prizes. I don't want to spoil all of it because I want people to go look at the article. Go figure. But the top 8, there will be full-size trophies. I am getting those ordered hopefully in the next 2 weeks. There is going to be swag bag prizes, meaning everybody walks out with a bag of goodies. There's going to be raffles. There's going to be prizes for best list name, prizes for we're having a terrain competition, painting prizes. So there are plenty of ways to win things, even if you don't, even if you're like, yeah, I'm a casual Legion player, or I'm just a hobbyist, or even you're like, yeah, I'm really getting into the game and I'm new and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. There's ways for you to win. There's ways for you to walk out and have a great time, even if you don't go 6-0 or whatever it would be. So.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's always nice when, because I think we're kind of uniquely situated in that our venues isn't really costing us anything. So we're able to take all this kind of entry fees and everything and just put it straight back into the community with prizes and everything. And it always feels great.
Absolutely.
All right. So with housekeeping out of the way, I think before we get into Battle Forces really quick, I kind of want to just go through what everyone has been playing or hot take that everyone has right now. So for a little bit of an example to start, I've finally settled on my worlds list.
Ooh,
So
the list
I am
has settled
playing-
down with a list.
I know, it's shocking, right?
Are you 100% or we can have a little waffle in between?
Let's not go crazy here.
So I am on spring break, and I'm going to be in Florida next week for like all week. So I'm not going to have that time to waffle. So like I'm losing a whole week. So I'm pretty much locked into this for now. And so it's like,
Well, lists are
I say for now,
21st, I think. So yeah.
Yeah,
But
by default.
So there's been a bit of popularity going around with a Cassian K2 Boba Fett list that's been 12x, which is just like triple veteran gunline and triple snipers. I'm doing a spin on that I'm taking Cassian, Boba, K2, of course, and then the triple veterans as well. But I traded out the 2 strike teams for 2 laser cannons, 2 FDs, because for hedge against darks, and realistically at those tournaments, tables tend to be a bit more open, so FDs feel a lot better. But I'm confident with it going into darks and into Blizzard, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second here. But yeah, basically the list is just Cassian, Boba Fett, K2, all chock full of upgrades, triple veterans with their heavy, triple Mark IIs, and then 2 FDs with a generator. I'm not sure which one yet, but like that's something I'll figure out in a second.
Nice. Now in that list, are you running
Very cool.
Boba more as like a linebacker and for the rule with respect for the gun line? Or
So for command cards, I do have both of Boba's 3 pips. So he's got the rocket and rule of respect. Probably open up with rule of respect just to get a lot of poke out, and then rocket is there to delete a unit or throw a bunch of saves into dark troopers. And then whipcord, of course, because can't leave home without whipcord. I've got Last Stand and Making His Way in the Galaxy, Boba's area attack, first 2 pips. And I haven't settled on the last 1 pip yet, because I'm thinking it's either Crack Shot or Simple Man. But Simple Man, I'm kind of leaning towards, because it gives me play into Hostage, which is kind of important for Blizzard Force. But like,
what's your
Crack Shot's also
other
really good.
what's your other one?
Whipcord. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough question. Crackshot's good. I mean, it saved my skin
Crackshot's
a
always
handful
good, but it's like,
of times. But yeah, Simple Man has some
It's-
great utility to it.
it's just the question of whether I need to like have it for like the guarantee when I'm going to Blizzard, or if I can get away with the realistically probably better value card out of Crackshot.
if you did do that, though, how many Boba cards does that give you?
I'd be a 5.
Yeah.
I'd be a 5,
Yeah,
which is
that's-
You have to be careful
It's
with them for
worrying.
sure.
Yeah, it's worrying, but like it's also like command cards. I'm not completely sure about yet, but like the list is what it is going to be. So wait,
Sounds
what?
solid.
Yeah.
It's funny because we were you asked like what we were playing, and then Adam, you posted this list this week, and I was like, wait, that's my list. Because I too
Yeah,
have been
pretty
playing
much.
Cassian and Boba. And
Because I faced that last Friday.
I have been playing
Yeah.
Cassian Boba, and I think I had tried a different version. I think I had Pathfinders and 2 FDs, and vets with that. And really you run, you start Boba in kind of the huddle with Ruler's Respect, and then you get him up there for the rocket. And I had tested out a version with Leia. So you get the coordinated bombardment, and then you get crack shot, and then you get rocket, and then you get, and so it's just bam, 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 bam from long range. And I recently changed out Leia, downgraded her to an officer. So I can add in 2 medics and then a sizable bid. And the bid has been helpful. So I've got a 12-point bid now with 2 medics and an officer. And so it allows me to kind of still get the long range bombardment for a couple of turns. But then I'm not taking early wounds on Boba. So Boba has 2 medics that stay on him and E-stems. So trying to, have my opponent churn through Boba is a lot. So that way I'm guaranteed to get that flamer off, maximize the output that he can do. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing lately. That and always looking for ways to run swoops. I saw in the Cincinnati Discord tonight they're running swoops, and I was feeling nostalgic, wanted to break my swoops out.
I wish it was so better right now. But yeah, and one thing I did want to note, with my list, now that you mention it, is that I don't have a bid with this list, which I don't know if that's going to be good or bad. Depends on what I'm up against, but I think I'm actually pretty fine with playing red for a lot of things. But yeah, David, Adam, what have you guys been playing? Whichever one wants to go first.
So I know you said other than Battle Forces, but honestly, I've been enjoying playing the new Remnant Battle Force. You know, maybe the hot take is it's the dark ages of the will of the Empire bears down on us all, and some of us crumble and just play it because it just seems fun. So that's what I've been playing lately. I just really like it. It's
the new fun stuff. Come on.
Well, it runs units that I liked running anyway, and then just gives them aims and free tokens. So it's like, well, cool. All the stuff I
seems good. Yeah,
it's a little bonus on top of it. I'm down. So yeah, I've just been testing that out. I also just really like the
what do you run in that
method of like playing with all the heavies? But basically, what I've been running, I played you with it, Matt, against your version of the Remnant that was just all saboteurs all the time.
Wasn't it 6 sabs that you had in that one?
Yeah, six sabs.
Just 6 sabs. It's fine.
But what I've been running is naked stormtrooper, naked shore, just for the requirements. 2 just normal scout troopers with duck and cover. 2 death troopers with the RT-97C or whatever it is. Which those hit like a truck.
It is amazing how strong they are with that. Yeah,
their range 4 is awesome.
Yeah, just kind of using them as like artillery pieces. Rounding it out with Gideon and a dark trooper with the assault cannon. So I don't know. I've been having success with it. Just obviously the tokens are good. Oh, there's also 2 speeder bikes in there, which again, I'm building tokens. So yeah, you have. I think you have a lot of different tools, kind of a Swiss Army knife Remnant, as I think thematically is appropriate. Got your bikes to just be your fire and forget missiles into softer targets and flanks. You got your dark troopers, which, as I'm sure we'll talk about more, are dark troopers. You just move them into your enemy, and they got to deal with it. You just a big brick wall come at you, and you got your death troopers as the artillery, throwing 8 dice, suppressive, usually with an aim, from the independent that rerolls 4 dice with their precise. You get a lot of hits through even heavy cover. And then I've always liked the scout troopers. So for me, running them just as the normals is pretty much what I usually do anyway. And with that aim, I think people don't expect them. And you just use them as little, shanks that people don't see coming at range 2. With that scout 3, they get there pretty quick.
With low profile and the new cover rules, they're tough to get to.
Yeah, and I mean,
sure.
And great if you get through the low profile in their heavy cover plus, and you kill them. That's like a 50-point unit. That means you're not putting stuff on the darks. You're not putting things into the death troopers. Like fair to me. So
yeah,
I've been enjoying it.
Their pool is super gross too, even without any of the other heavies or anything. So it's just because it's 8 black still at range 2 with the name, so it's just a lot.
Sharpshooter 1. So
yeah, you're pushing a lot. It's gross.
Yep.
Yeah. What about you, David?
Well, I've been, so last SmackDown was 3 or 4 months ago.
It's been a bit.
And I've been playing Anakin and Yoda with 3 Naked Core, and I've been switching out the rest of the pieces, but that's been like my main thing for months now. But recent revelations and just facing things like Remnant and all the stuff with all this awesome long range right now, it's been kind of challenging to get my Jedi in position to make it effective. And I feel like I've done all right with them still, but there's some matchups that are just really tough when you have over half of your your army in 2 units. So I decided I'm going to try something a little different. And last weekend, I tried out 501st for the first time. I had most of their stuff for a while and enough to run, a reasonable army with it. And I was actually pleasantly surprised at how it ran. I really feel like one, Scott's always good, for getting objectives early and getting good positioning. But what I really found I like, especially with the new meta, is all those arch troopers with sharpshooter 1. It's actually really handy right now. You're losing 1 dice versus 2. It adds up over time.
Yeah.
And so let's see, my current list, I was pulling it up. It's got no bid, which it's not normal for me. I usually like a pretty decent bid, but I feel like if, especially if we're talking about, of all the Battle Force, Blizzard, which is the one we all probably fear the most, they usually have 15, 20 point bid if they want. Like, it's not hard for them. So
yeah, so you're looking at generally a 10 to 18 point bid nowadays with Blizzard.
Yeah, they've got really high bids. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I'll forsake that. And, I definitely got to have Anakin in there. I love his melee presence and his dodge ability. I love his dodge spam. So I've got him. The list I just built: Clone Commander, 2 Phase 2s, naked though, nothing on them, 3 ARC Trooper teams with the DC 15 on them, 1 strike team with Echo, and 1 ATRT with laser cannon. So it comes to 9 acts, and this is what I'm not tested. I played a similar one last weekend. This one I've adjusted. So I figure with 9 acts, hopefully making them reasonably tanky. My hope is that facing something like Blizzard Force, all that initial upfront firepower, I can hopefully ward that off. Even if I lose a unit or two, hopefully I can even things out pretty quick, take out the bikes, and then force them to come at me with Vader versus Anakin, which is a fair enough matchup. So, but I'm really digging the ARC Troopers, and I played them. So I started playing probably 3 years ago now, almost, I guess, technically, because I started in 2020. So, wow, it's amazing think about now. But anyway, I started and I loved ARC Troopers at first, but they always died so quick. And so I've built this to be a little bit tankier, and try and use reliable from the Phase 2s, and definitely Anakin's dodges, along with leap from the front, actually is the main thing that attracts me to 5.0 first outside of their, 4 special forces option. So far, so good. I'm liking it, but I definitely need to get as many games as I can in before Adepticon here soon.
Remind me, David, which one is, for those that don't know, like me, what's lead from the front? Is that the Indomitable card? What's that one do?
So lead from the front is one. It's their 1 pip. When you build your command hand, though, it counts as a 2 pip. And after friendly commanders issue an order by the card, choose 3 friendly units within range 1 of the commander, and each of those units gain either 1 aim or 1 dodge token.
Okay, so that's
depending on my matchup. Yes, exactly. Okay. So I figure, against something like, say, Blizzard Force, I'd probably use the dodges and hopefully ward off a little bit of that upfront firepower. If it's something where my opponent's far enough out, though, I might even give them the aim, send them out there. And with tactical, I've found that it's really nice. I'm already getting that aim, and then I can hopefully use that second one. So you reroll 2 dice with the first one, and then hopefully you use the second for a pierce. Is pretty awesome. So especially in this meta, I feel like that's a pretty solid card.
I can see that.
Yeah, it definitely is one of the bigger parts of playing 5.0 first, I think. But I guess with those last 2 lists, that's kind of a good sneak peek into what we're going to talk about today, being battle forces. So there's 6 battle forces now in the game. There's 2 Empire ones, and then 1 for each of the other main factions, and then 1 that's, I guess, the mercenary one, that being Shadow Collective. I figure probably the best one to start with here is going to be Blizzard Force, kind of on theme with what we talked about last week, being countering the big bad Dark Troopers. The equally big bad Blizzard Force has been kind of terrorizing the competitive meta for a while now because, 4 bikes and everything is really good. But for everyone that doesn't know, Blizzard Force kind of themed at the Empire's invasion of Hoth. It's special rules, as all these battle forces have their own special rules that kind of makes them that appeal to it. As for Blizzard Force, they have access to Commander to Vader, both Operative and Commander Vader. Just hot take on that in a second here. But for the other commander slots is General Veers and an Imperial Officer. Their core units, they have access to Snowtroopers and 0 to 2 stormtroopers. These generally take the form of heavy response units, which we'll talk about in a second here. They have access to 74Z speeder bikes and their E-Web heavy blasters, and an ATSD in the heavy slot. As for their rank requirements, in a 800-point game, you can include you can have 1 to 2 commander and operative units. At least one unit has to be commander. So that's saying specifically that you can only have 2 total, which makes sense. You can't spam like 4 Imperial officers or something. Each army must include 3 to 6 core units. Pretty standard there. The spicy part of Blizzard Force is that for the support slot, they can include 1 to 4 support units. So you can bring quadruple bikes, quadruple E-Webs, and then each one can take up to 2 ATSDs, 0 to 2 ATSDs. As for their special command cards, they have their 1 pip is unrelenting fire. Orders 2 units. Enemy units cannot remove more than 1 suppression token during their rally step. Pretty big with suppression changes. Their 2 pip is overwhelming barrage, which again issues orders to 2 units. And it says, once this round, at the end of an activation of a friendly commander unit, it may perform the attack using the following weapon. It's a 4 to infinite standard for barrage weapons, 4 black with surge to hit. And it has blast, beam 1, immune deflect, and suppressive. So 4 keywords in that one attack.
Big deal.
Just no big deal. Just four keywords in that one attack.
So there's a core unit.
Yeah. And then as for their 3 pip, they order 3 units with it. And it reads, each friendly core unit that is issued an order using this card gains Spur. Spur says that you can gain 1 suppression to increase your speed by 1 for that move. And then the weapons of each friendly core unit that is issued an order using this card gains suppressive. That works very well in combination with the Stormtrooper heavy response units, which we'll talk about here now. It's a base unit for the Stormtroopers, 30 points. Their big thing is that they have flexible response 2, which is they must equip 2 heavy units, heavy weapon upgrades. So
makes them strong.
Yeah, and then they've also got precise.
Like such a drawback.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
And then they've got precise 1 and unhindered as well. So kind of the idea behind this battle force and what makes it so scary is that you're able to bring 2 of those guys that have the RT-97C and the DLT-19, I think is what it is, from is it a DLT? The 2 red, 1 range 1 to 4.
1 to 4.
Yeah, so you bring both of the range 4. Yeah, you bring both of the range 4 heavies on those guys, and you're throwing 3 red, 3 white with precise 1 every turn. And then on top of that, you've got 4 speeder bikes. Speeder bikes are just incredibly efficient for what they do. And then along with all of that, you have room for Operative Vader with all the fixins, and then a 19-point bid. So
that's craziness.
That is kind
of all that is the icing on the cake.
Yeah, if I think so. 2 hot takes that I have that I don't know if people agree with. Blizzard Force, I think, isn't broken. I think it's fine as soon as you restrict them to not having a bid to bring all that stuff. If they're playing at 800 with the Medalist, which is the 2 Stormtrooper units with the HRU Stormtroopers with the range 4 heavies, 2 Naked Snow Troopers, Vader, 4 bikes, and an officer. If all of that together costs 800 and Blizzard is playing without a bid, they're fine.
I disagree.
I actually think I'm much more with you, Adam. Actually, I think the HRUs, the heavy response units, are still overtuned for what the rest of the list has. But I do agree that I personally believe if the points were a little more equal, that takes a lot of the scary factor away from the quad bike version of Blizzard. If you're not always trying to fight off on turn 0, playing either bombing run or breakthrough, things like that are just skewed from the start on top of a really powerhouse list. I do think it helps at least a little bit to mitigate some of what Blizzard has going for it.
I can see where you guys are coming from. I think for me, the HRUs are problematic. To me, if you look at the meta from Adepticon last year, when the game was a little bit better balanced, the unit that was clearly hands down a problem was the unit that threw 6 dice at range 4 with precise 2 and a good access to aims. And so now we're seeing that, hey, the unit that's a problem is the HRU that can shoot 6 dice at range 4 with precise and good access to aims. I mean, if you look at any of the other range 4 guns...
You're talking about the Ion Spider.
Yeah, the Ion Spiders.
Yeah, for those that don't know, it's the Ion Spider that can throw 6 dice, precise 2, and good access to aims. They were completely, undercosted and very efficient at what they do. And yeah, very much the boogeyman. Add to the fact that they had Ion, that was just icing on the cake. But HRUs basically do the same thing as Ion Spiders. They want to sit and just reroll dice and shoot 6 dice at range 4. And I think honestly, they're just, that's too much for the game. If you look at range 4 weapons of every other faction, I don't know of any range 4 weapon that throws more than 3 or 4 dice, 4 at max. The CMOs from the vets, it's 4 dice, but it's 4 white. It's critical too, but it's still 4 white dice. You're kind of hoping to luck into something, whereas you're talking 3 whites, 3 reds. Reds are clearly very consistent. So you're normally going to be averaging 3 before an aim. And then you get the aim, they're usually going to get 2 aims if you got an officer. And so you're rolling, those 3 reds 2 more times. And so your average goes up to like 6. More like 5, but you're talking about 5 into heavy cover every turn at range 4. That's a lot. And so I think the problem with Blizzard Force is not just the bikes. It's not just Vader. It's that they have the most consistent range 4 gun in the game, which is throwing 6 in the cover every turn.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, if you think about it, can you imagine equipping HRU and the DLT in there? That'd be impact 4, and it'd still be range 3 and everything. But I feel like if any list could tech against, Dark Troopers, Remnant in general, and worrying about armor, I think they could absolutely, between that, the bikes and everything, I think they could just demolish whatever they want to face.
Quick note before Adam speaks here. That rocket launcher is range 4, so you're still throwing impact 4 at range 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's really good against Dark Troopers.
When people are talking about maybe using air speeders or something, try and counter them, but that would definitely eat through an air speeder if it can hit it, which range 4, good chance.
For sure. Yeah, I was simply going to say that I think it's funny, and I'm trying not to get ahead of ourselves here, but when you're talking about the powerhouses at range 4, yes, Blizzard Force has those HRUs, and they obviously, as stated, do a lot at range 4. But I do think it's funny that they went ahead and doubled down and gave Remnant almost the same thing, if not, I would argue, a little better in the Death Troopers. Far as the amount of dice they can throw, because they can, in Remnant, pick any heavy unit to go into any squad. And then you're tacking on suppressive, and that's on top of, if you want the 8 dice with the RT-97C borrowed from the Stormtrooper profile. And with the precise 2, just like the Ion Spider, that was such a menace. They get to reroll up to 4 if they have an aim, which with the independent from that battle force, they almost always are going to. And they might even have 2 if they didn't have to use their action to recover that turn or move or whatever else. Yeah. So,
well, Kalani, a lot of the lists have had Kalani so that she can give them the aims and they can recover with an aim. And it was just really, really good combo.
So, yeah, I do agree that Remnants can do it the same with Death Troopers, but the difference there is that these HRUs with just the DLT and the RT-97C is only 74 points. Right. So you're paying a reasonable 96 with the Death Troopers with the RT-97C, but the HRUs at 74 is an absolute steal.
They're way undercosted. However, if you can do 3 or 4 damage, that really nerfs them a bit, but you still have to get through to that first, and they can hit you from far. Stay back,
if you're able to get through those wounds earlier, because the important part that I did miss earlier was that they only have 3 units, like 3 models in the list before the HRUs. So you only have to do 2 wounds before you're going off a heavy with those units.
Mm-hmm. That's their only small weakness, if anything.
Yeah, I know. I do agree with Adam, though. I think that there is going to be a reasonable problem with Death Troopers taking that RTC gun. I mean, it's a lot of dice on a Death Trooper
I think the
unit.
only reason it's not being talked about is because Blizzard Force is the dominating
because
force.
Dark Troopers and Blizzard Force are.
Yeah, if they didn't touch that, I think all of a sudden the conversation just shifts to that.
Yeah, there's only so much room in the limelight, and right now it's being hogged by.
The reason I wanted to start with Blizzard Force is because, as I mentioned at the start, they are like hyper competitive right now. Being able to bring the 4-speeder bikes and Vader and HRUs and everything, it's just kind of like a perfect storm of all the aggression. So the other thing with looking at Blizzard here is kind of looking for ways to counter them. If you're looking to go into those tournaments and everything. So I was curious what success you guys have had against Blizzard like that.
Yeah,
is there such a thing?
I'll start with that.
Consistently, anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
bow down to your Imperial overlords and move on.
That's right. Yeah, I know we played.
So I've only faced it once. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're good. Yeah, I know Slaber and I went to a tournament in Cincy on Saturday. And so I ended up having to play Blizzard Force round 2. And it was a slaughterhouse. I mean, it's fighting uphill. And I got bad turn 0 for my list, running the FDs and Boba and Cassian. Vader got in there much quicker than I wanted. But one of the things that I felt like I did fairly effectively was killing off the bike wave. I had all but one single mini dead off the table by round 2. And that one mini had just 1 wound and had to go run and hide in a corner and eventually died. But so the bike wave was the easy part. The HRUs are the hard kind of counter. And part of that is because they don't have to move with their range 4 guns. So they're able to just dig in and shoot everything at range 4. Meanwhile, I have to kind of worry about Operative Vader getting in there. And so Operative Vader got in and kind of cleaned me a little. So I think the key is, how do you figure out how to survive the bike alpha strike and kill off the bikes? Then you got to worry about, all right, Vader's coming in. And then the key is, all right, how do I get wounds into these HRUs? Because I've got to get enough wounds to take off one of the heavies to start getting some real dice attrition. And that was the key. I think, for me, it was, I got good shots into the HRUs round 2 when I could, but I didn't get the heavies off. And so you kind of got to get enough wounds to start stripping those heavies so that they start losing efficiency. Because turns 4, 5, and 6, if they're just able to aim, shoot everything, and you're kind of getting attritioned, that's when things are going to really start hurting. So I think the key is get some, whether it's sniper shots, whether it's something with Pierce, to really make sure that you are getting wounds on those HRUs after you survive that bike wave.
Mm-hmm.
So against
my
from, I don't know. Go ahead, David.
No, that's fine.
No, I was just going to say, so against Blizzard Force, because I personally haven't played against Blizzard Force very much. Obviously there's a lot of conversation and buzz about it, but from for me not having played, what would your recommendations be as like, here's your macro strategy that maybe works? Like, okay, do you turtle up and go very defensive tech, try to keep all your guns pointed at good lines of approach and just hold until turn 2, turn 3, and just kind of let the objectives fall as they may until late game? Or do you go the whole opposite way, just try and out aggression the bikes and just meet them head on, and whatever is left standing after the dust settles? Like, what's the macro strategy?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I think that starts with kind of like, you got to figure out what kind of Blizzard Force you're facing. Most of the times when people bring it to I'm going to call it the try-hard list, but that's not a good name for it. The one that we see a lot online.
The metal list.
If players are showing up with that, it's usually 4 bikes, and it's Operative Vader and 2 HRUs and whatever else you can fit in there. And so there's other versions where you can bring like an ATSD or 2 ATSDs, but most lists are going to have bikes, and they're going to have 3 to 4. And so, I mean, the strategy they're normally going to come at you with is they're going to bring those bikes in a wave at the very end of turn 1 and try to just get, they might have emergency transponders to get some extra aims on them and just go in and hit you hard. That big alpha strike. So I played Blizzard Force a couple times. One of my most successful games against them, I actually forced them into disarray. And so what I ended up doing is on disarray, you have to put one guy in the other corner. And so I just hit that other corner where the one guy was, pinched that off real quick, and then just basically pulled back and kind of hid. So I think the key is you kind of want to make them come to you, because you want to get a deployment. I mean, if you're in a deployment like Hemmed In, there's no real good way to do that. But if you're on something like Major Offensive or Long March, then you can kind of force them to come to you, and you want to catch the bikes in a way to where they're kind of outpacing Vader, so that you can start putting wounds into them and not have to worry about the HRUs and Vader and all this other stuff coming into you.
Because if you're closing with the bikes, then Vader just says, "Oh, good, you're here. Thanks."
Yeah, good, you're here. Yes, let's greet you with my glow stick.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And like the one I faced one at Gen Con last year, and mind you, we were both 0-2 at the time. It'd been a rough day, but what I noticed was with the bikes, he managed to make most of them, like I think just the way he drew, most of them went later on. But it's like they came in and they just did so much damage off their initial shot. But, so starting round 2, I was kind of in a little bit of a hole. I was kind of worried about the damage they were getting on like my tank and stuff. I was running Anakin Padme tank shenanigans back when standby was a thing. And so I was really concerned there. But what I did notice, though, and what helped me is that once I survived that initial wave, if you can take down at least, you don't even have to go off the whole unit, but if you go off one of the bikes, then they're shooting half their pool. It's not nearly as dangerous. A full bike hitting you in the face, though, can hurt a lot. So if you can take that down to 1 even, maybe it'll run off, or maybe it'll just shoot maybe 3 dice at you, and that's not nearly as big a concern. Because I still remember once I took out the bikes, this was a Veers version, actually, so it didn't have Vader. They had Veers and commanding officers, so like the alpha strike on it was big, potentially. If he could hit you in the open round 1, like a lot of potential damage. But I noticed, though, once the bikes were gone, then you saw the HRUs had the snows and stuff, like it really didn't concern me that much, especially because I had Anakin. He didn't have any linebacker, anyone to answer the melee question, and the tank started doing a lot of work too. Is a bloody battle was still a tough one, but again, this was not the prime version of it by any means, but I definitely think that weakening the bikes initially, at the very least, even if you can't kill them off, is a big deal. That would definitely put you in a much better position for the following rounds, because if you ignore the bikes, they're going to hit you in the face, and then you're going to have the HRUs coming up, and then eventually you're just going to be surrounded. So at that point, the game's more than likely lost. But I really think that if the best thing you do is maybe make them run some standbys if you can, like the FDs. If you're playing Rebels and when they have FDs, like their Sentinel standby range 3 could be big. And getting like initial shot, maybe doing at least 3 damage on them, take out a bike. That would be pretty awesome. And as someone who's playing Republic right now, I definitely feel like trying to hunker down and gives me dodges that I can up was probably for Republic probably our best, because I have heard some people on some chats and some other podcasts talking about how like Anakin, Padme, for example, are tougher for them to run into, because if you survive that initial wave, the bikes and stuff are pretty squishy, and then you just got to take out a couple of the HRU, and then they start going down significantly. So if you can do that, you can be in a pretty reasonable condition against something that's got just a lot of upfront firepower.
So I will. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. But I think so. From my personal experience with it, the number one thing to do against Blizzard Force is to kill the bikes, and kill the bikes. Don't forget to kill the bikes because there's 4 of them, so you got to kill them 4 times. A lot of the list revolves around these speeder bikes because the part of the problem with Blizzard Force is that they bring a big bid and a very oppressive battle deck in that they are bringing. So Blizzard Force is generally going to be bringing Breakthrough and Bombing Run because they have speeders, Hostage because they have Vader, and then usually it used to be Payload. I think it still is Payload, but like they don't have a super strong number 4 anymore. But still, Payload versus Vader is going to not feel great. But the 2 things that I've found that have success against Blizzard Force is to kill the bikes, as I said. The other thing is to have a plan for their battle deck. Whether it's you have something to deal with being able to form a line, form a wall to block their speeders from getting through and Breakthrough and Bombing Run, having speeders of your own to play Bombing Run against, having something to do on Hostage. Any of that goes like an exponentially long way because if you're able to, Blizzard Force's one of its biggest strengths is that battle deck. So if you're able to negate that advantage, you are in a much better spot versus them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that basically just comes down to the terrain of the table when you get there, or knowing the objectives. Like that's how it sounds rough because most of those times they have the bid, as you've said, and you're not going to be able to statistically flip them to that 4th of 4 objectives that they have priority in wanting to play. Most of the time you probably are going to end up in Hostage, Bombing Run, or Breakthrough.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's the big problem with Blizzard Force right now. It's why if you listen to podcasts and you listen to kind of the community talk, it's why they're the hot button right now, is because it's not a list archetype you can kind of walk up to and just win. Like there's not really a good out. You almost have to be prepared, whether you're doing clones and your plan is to share a bunch of dodges to survive that alpha strike, or you've got really, really long range with rebels or snipers or whatever it is. Like, there's not a really great way to react to the situation, if you haven't built a list with them in mind. And that's kind of a tough one. Like that's why I think a lot of the community is anxious for them to kind of see an update and a change and a push. Is because there's really not a great way for an average all-comers list to react to it because it's such a heavy oppressive alpha strike.
Yeah.
I gotta say too, like the Macquee, did they even have bikes when they were attacking on off? Like I don't think they did.
Now, listen,
so can we just
there was
wipe
a
them out
toy
and
line.
store fresh?
Canonically.
There's a special edition of the movies that actually has one little
Yep.
3 second
And they made a whole line of Kenner toys back in the day that were snowtrooper speeder bikes that were geared specifically to Hoth.
Little didn't know the damage they were about to cause.
I know.
I think we have beaten the Blizzard Force horse to death.
That horse is dead.
A couple times now.
They still won't die on the
Dead, Jim.
So I think let's move on to the other Empire Battle Force, being Imperial Remnants. This is the newest one. I think the one that most people haven't had as much experience with, and also the one with the most complicated special rules. So for their special rules, we
don't have to read over them all.
I want to explain the special rules because they're the weirdest part of this and the hardest part to understand.
Okay.
For scout forces, for scout troopers and Imperial Death Troopers, those are your core. These count as core troopers for list building. They still have special forces tokens in game, but they are core units for list building. When you build an army, you cannot take more than one of those units with a core rank until you take one of each unit of a core rank. So being stormtroopers, shore troopers, scout troopers, and death troopers, you have to take one each of those before you can double up. For issuing orders, commanders can only issue orders at range 2. And if you are outside of that range 2 bubble, you get independent aim 1 or dodge 1 just for being not close to your commander. And then the sticky part, the part that kind of is the main reason you play Remnants, is any trooper unit that can use any of the other core unit heavy upgrades. So you have, for example, the Death Troopers with the RT-97C. You can throw like the rocket launcher on the Shore Troopers. You can throw the Shore Trooper heavy on the Stormtroopers, et cetera, et cetera. You can just mix and match like that.
That's honestly the one thing about it I do really like. It's interesting builds.
Yeah, no restrictions.
A lot of variety.
And then, of course, it's Gideon, Scout Troopers, Stormtroopers, Death Troopers, Shore Troopers, and then Bikes and an EWEB and the Dark Troopers. But,
I thought it was interesting they didn't come out with any specific command cards for it either, like they had the other battle forces.
That is the other thing. There is no command cards for these. You've got what you've got. So I kind of want to defer to Adam here because he's the one that's played the most of this out of all of us for initial thoughts and everything about it.
My initial thoughts on it, honestly, are that it's stronger than I think people are probably, from just Discord and other podcasts and things I listen to. It really isn't being talked about much. I think it's under the shadow of the Blizzard boogeyman, as you will, and I think it's pretty strong. I've played probably about 5 games now, 5 or 6 with it, and I think I've lost just to you, David.
Inches. It came down to 1 kill.
I mean, yeah, you played it great, and I fed Anakin my Dark Troopers, which was
Saber throw is amazing.
They're supposed to be invincible. I thought they were, terrifying. Lightsaber twice to the face. Yoda doing some shenanigans to make that happen.
Impact 3, Pierce 3.
Yeah, Dark Troopers are vulnerable to attrition, guys. They do lose models and simply lose effectiveness. They're not the AAT where you have to go every single wound and then it explodes. But they are good. They are still very good. And can be included in the list. And whether you run them close to like Gideon or an Imperial officer, whatever commander you choose for Remnant, they can still get their tokens if you give them the program loyalty, or like anything else in the Remnant Force, if you run them outside of that limited range 2 commander bubble, then they have independence. And honestly, I think that's another area they're underestimated in, is the fact that you can take in list building those Death Troopers and those Scout Troopers as part of your kind of core requirements, which are Courage 2 units. And you can run them in my games so far, at least, outside of that limited Courage bubble, and generally do just fine. Particularly if you have, I don't know, those couple speeder bikes or Dark Troopers or more target saturated units. That suppression hasn't really been an issue on those units, particularly your Death Troopers. If they get shot at enough, they're going to recover to get their range 4 configuration gun back anyway. So
I was gonna say, in our game, I love the fact that you could recover them and still get the aim for being outside of commanders range 2. So like it's a really sweet combo.
Precise 2 value on them. Push that stuff through cover. But I think they're pretty good. I think the one big weakness that I've had to really kind of play around is, while you can run Gideon with the Darksaber, they don't have an awful lot in the way of melee protection or anti-Jedi tech that you can do. I think you really have to be aware of that if your opponent is across the table with a whole bunch of glow sticks that they want to throw at you. I do think you can play a little bit into the fact that, hey, this is a army that doesn't care if we're playing disarray. In fact, that's great. I don't want to be near my commander. That's dumb. Who does that? And it's much harder for a Jedi or a Sith to hunt down all of your breadcrumbs if they all have aims or dodges and are spread out over the table. So I do think you have to be aware of melee skews coming at that list and really work your deployments. But otherwise, I think it's probably one of the best gunline style armies that I've played in a while.
Yeah, that's
because I felt like those two Death Troopers sitting in the back with the range 4 and everything, they could do a lot of damage. And range 4 is amazing, honestly. And then you take the fact that your bikes can get a dodge on top of their natural cover that they get, maybe even cover 2 with all the new cover rules. And they're actually surprisingly hard to take down now compared to what they used to be.
Right, or you just simulate what we talked about with Blizzard Force. They do it with the emergency transponder to get an aim. With the Remnant, you just do it with Independent. You throw them at something, and kind of what I said I use them for is just a fire and forget missile. Their bikes. In this particular list, I run 2, and they are going to go and just with the aim from Independent, hunt down something squishy and trade for points. Generally. And if you're shooting at the bikes, then the Dark Troopers and the Death Troopers are kind of free to do what they want to do. I think it's just another battle force that is really good at threat saturation, where it's like, okay, there's a lot you got to deal with. Figure out what pick your poison. So.
I felt like it was really versatile the one time I faced it. Just a lot of options and things you can do with it.
For sure. So the one thing I want to touch on is I'm curious. Heavy weapon combos, because those are kind of like the big thing for this battle force. Outside of the RT-97C on the Death Troopers, as we've kind of also talked a lot about, what other combos have you found that work really well?
One I'm debating is, again, with the Death Troopers, but the HH-12 for current meta reasons with the impact.
Yeah.
It's still 7 die at range 4. You're already going to be recovering with them to get their normal range 4 config back, and it helps with opposing vehicles that people were bringing to counter Dark Troopers or their Dark Troopers themselves. I also, like I said, really like running Scouts, and if you can give the Scouts, I think it's the T-21, the critical 2 gun that the Stormtroopers gets.
It's a lot of dice.
People don't see that one coming.
It is, yes, that is my favorite one.
You get your Scouts to do their normal Scout 3 move, maybe use the new rules to speed 1 up on top of something and fire down at range 2. You're throwing so many dice with critical 2. You cut their cover down 1 with sharpshooter.
So
you have an
are we giving aim with Independent?
With your Independent. I mean, I legitimately feel like I'm playing Shadow Collective when I play Remnant. I'm just like, wow, look at all these tokens.
A little bit.
All the time. It's raining free things.
Scout Troopers are definitely my favorite.
I don't think Empire needed that, but I'm happy to have it.
Did Empire need a lot of things they've gotten recently? I'm just saying.
So
I play Rebels and I play Empire, so I'm okay.
Just for clarity for everyone out there that hasn't experimented with Remnants yet, these Scout Troopers with the T-21 on them, it's 8 black, 4 white, critical 2 on a unit that doesn't natively surge offensively, by the way. Critical 2, sharpshooter 1, and this unit costs 70 points.
I didn't realize it was that cheap with it.
It's 70 points.
It's cheap.
It is extremely good bang for your buck, especially because they're going to want to be on their own. Any other thoughts for Remnants before we move on to?
I think let's talk just for a second, real quick. How do you counter them? Like, what do you do against them? Like, what's the key? If you're not the Remnant player, what do you do?
I'm not too sure just because I haven't played it enough.
I know I've played at least 2 games against them. I think for me as a Rebel player, my key is to make you not spread out, just to try to deny you all those extra tokens. If I can clump you up in Long March or Roll Out or something where you kind of have to clump up a little bit and you can't fully spread out, also limits those bikes coming in. So I think the big key is like trying to get you to get a smaller game sample, essentially. If you need to keep all your guys in a center intercept, okay, that's easier for me to do that. Or if you need to change the deployment zone or whatever it is, I think bringing that size down so that I'm limiting your extra tokens is good for me.
I would absolutely agree with that. Just in my experience playing, there's been times where, it's kind of presented when you look at the rules. You look at a normal army and any less range for your commander's courage bubble, that sounds like a negative, right? But I've honestly found it to be the other way around playing it. There's been times where I'm like, Gideon, you're too close to things. Back up, man. Let's just stop micromanaging, stop choking lieutenants and ordering people. Just let them do their thing. It's fine.
But I have to ask, though, with that in mind, though, do you feel like Gideon is almost a hamper? Like, does he get to do much except try and stay away even and play his command cards? So that sounds like the one challenge you'd have running in with it.
Yeah, so I have not experimented with just throwing like an officer in, mostly because I'm not sure what else I would attach the points to. Maybe I'd put a couple heavies on the Stormtrooper and the Shore Trooper unit that I'm running, because right now those have nothing.
Do your scouts usually have heavies on them?
They don't, actually, in what I'm running. I've thought about doing that. But honestly, I like the fact that people ignore them a lot of the time if you're just running them as is, particularly in that kind of a list. They also can just be your objective grabber, and then if they got to go grab a box or hold your back, transmission point or VAP or whatever it is, I don't feel as bad if they don't have a heavy on them. That's just me, though. That's my style of them.
That makes sense.
But I do agree with you, Matt, that in my experience, clumped up is rough. It's just weird to have this concept of a army that essentially functions as a really strong gun line and doesn't want to be clumped up. Because usually, a gun line just wants, to play the, Revolutionary War. Here's all my guns. They're pointed at you. Please
kneel and shoot.
Come at me when you are ready, sir.
Yeah. Next line, kneel and shoot.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, let's move on to the other Black Civil War battle force, being Echo Base for Rebels. So for just so the defender side of Hoth. So special rules. Each Hoth. So you've got Leia, Luke, Han, Rebel officers, Chewie, and
just
R2.
Commander Luke, though, right?
Yeah, just Commander.
Or can they do operative?
No operative.
Just Commander.
Then your core is going to be those vets and the Mark IIs. Supports, you got your FDs and your Tauntauns. Heavies are your T-47s. They have the same Force org chart as Blizzard Force does, except they're able to bring up to 4 total commanders and operatives. As for their command cards, their 1 pip is just order 1 unit. At the end of your command phase, your opponent must choose one of their non-commander tokens or units that has a face-up order token, if able, and return it to their order pool. Their 2 pip is order 2 units. Those, if it's friendly trooper unit, is just shoot an order with this card and may recover. Pretty straightforward there. Then the one kind of like the scary card from Echo Base is the 3 pip, which is orders 3 core units. Each friendly core unit gains an aim token, and each friendly emplacement trooper gains a standby token. So if you build this, if you want to build it for maximum means, you can get 7 standbys off that card with 4 FD cannons and 3 of the Mark IIs, as those are all emplacement troopers.
Nobody move.
A new player running right into all of that would just be slaughtered in one turn.
It's not great.
You get caught. Yeah.
So from personal experience, being a Rebel player, when this first came out, it seemed really, really, really good. Since then, it's fallen off. And the hard part, and like the main reason why, and the hard part for Echo Base is that it's a very polarizing style, in that your list is very, very immobile, because you've got the FDs and the Mark IIs, both of which don't like to move like at all or can't. And the hard part of this list ends up being objective play. there's still a ton of shenanigans you can pull off with this, and I think it's better than people have kind of thought about recently. But like, it is just a very polarizing style to it.
Well, we talked about liking the kind of macro concept of turtling for a little bit and playing into some of these other forces. Is that not a legitimate way to do it?
It is.
Yeah.
I'll say like the one weakness with this, and probably the way that you want to beat it, jump the gun a little bit, not talking about at the end here, is objectives.
I'm gonna back up, Adam. I think you're getting a little deep in that. So there's a couple, unlike the Blizzard Force or the Imperial Remnant, there's a lot of different ways to run Echo Base.
That's also true.
Yeah, and I think that let's start with that. There's a couple. You can either run this kind of as a furball or a wait and shoot gun line, with all your FDs. And what I mean by that is you can either run a bunch of Tauntauns or you can run a bunch of emplacement troopers. And there's actually a third way too. You could actually run it as like a hero hammer. Maybe you really want Leia, Han, Chewie, R2, or some combination of those and Commander Luke. So I think it's going to be played a lot of different ways depending on how it is. I know Ryan Slawski's been running the furball kind of version with 2 Tauntauns, 2 FDs very successfully for like 8 months plus or something since this launched. So there's a couple different ways to run it. I think the initial out of the gate that Adam's talking about was 4 FDs. Everyone wanted a really big long gun line where you can place 4 FDs. You get maximum 3 vets, 3 Mark IIs, and then you just wait. And the problem I think people were running into is once you do all that, you only have 3 things that have thumbs to pick up stuff. And that's your 3 vets. I mean, you might have some officers or maybe even Leia. But I mean, you only have 3 things to run out and grab those boxes or run out and grab those intercepts. And so you realize very quickly that you need your entire opponent's army to run at you. Because if they don't, and you're playing something like key positions and they score turn 6, they could just be like, all right, we're going to hide behind this rock with our whole army, and then we're going to run there on turn 5. And so then you're kind of like, crap, what do I do? Because I've got 4 things that can't get to that middle key position and need to be shooting all the game.
Well, how much does the new rule about no overhanging troopers' bases hurt the FDs? Is that much of a change for them too, or
it does hurt them
because they're all about deployment?
I would say it does. Well, I do think it does hurt them. It definitely hurts them. Don't get me wrong. But I think with tables becoming more open because of the cover changes, and that they can shoot from anywhere on their cylinder now instead of just at the one point at the center of their gun, they are able to find angles as well and everything. And it's not like they're usually not shooting into heavy cover anyway. So it's like, I think it kind of ends up being like a net neutral, probably leaning more towards a negative. But it's not
something I've thought about.
It's not unit ending essentially. Like you can still very comfortably bring these on a table.
I agree with most of what Adam is saying, but I do think there's a big hindrance to them, not being able to put them on top of a building anymore if the building's positioned strangely, not being able to put them on a rock. You can't really elevate them in the same way that you used to be able to get better line of sight. And so if a table is just super heavy, line of sight becomes a serious issue for FDs.
It's kind of like a 2 steps backwards, 1 step forward kind of thing with it. But yeah, so
just give Leia a card like Gideon's where you can
teleport your FD
instead of Dark Troopers.
Well, and the key to that, honestly, is if you're running FDs, I like to keep Rapid in my deck.
I was like, you need to make sure to not, if you're going against this list, if you go against this
although
list,
with Dark Troopers,
they're going to get the Rapid anyway with Dark Troopers. I mean, essentially at that point, that's the one matchup that you don't want to see 2 Dark Troopers Rapid in, but it's almost worth it to get your FDs dropped in. It depends on the match and where you're going, but you can box them out a little bit, but yeah.
The number one thing to avoid when in deployments versus a Echo base list is definitely cut. Don't give them rapid reinforcements because it's either FD or advance. Because it's either FDs getting their perfect angles, or it's 2 tauntauns ending up at range 2 on your flanks, and neither make for a good time at all. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, though, for how to beat them, objectives are your best friend because they're not great at. They're most likely not great at a lot of objectives. Pretty much all the ones that need thumbs, they're going to feel relatively bad to okayish at for hostage.
And the ones that want to move, like they're not going to want to play payload. They definitely can't play bombing run. And so things that require a lot of mobility out of them because they've.
You don't think the Tons could do bombing run okay? If you had 2 or 3?
They can if they've got 3 or 4 bombing or 3 or 4 tauntauns, but that's not usually the case. But if you see that version, obviously that's totally different. But if they've got 2 or 3 FDs or even marks, they're not going to want to move.
The other thing though with the tauntaun list is that you can then pretty comfortably play these things that require even more thumbs. There's more options, I think. Like it just they're good at different objectives.
Does 2 and 2, right? 2 Tauns, 2 FDs. So he kind of like bounces it.
He does actually do 3 Tauns and an FD.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So yeah, he could do bomb run just fine then, theoretically.
All right. Okay. But, so it's like objective play is your big one versus Echo Base. But from there, I think we should move on to 501st. So quick breakdown for 501st is they've got it's Anakin, Phase 2s, ARC Troopers, ATRT, and Bark Speeders, and then the LAT. And then their unique upgrades allowed are Echo and 5s. Makes sense considering they're 501st ARC Troopers. You can have 1 to 2 commander and operative units. At least one needs to be a commander. 1 to 4 core units. So you only have to pay the 1 unit for the core tax. Special forces, each army must include 1 to 4 special forces. Must include, so you have to run that special forces. Same with the support slot. Each army must include 1 to 2 support units, and then each army may include up to 1 LAT. As for their cards, just read them through them real quick. They're 1 pip, lead from the front, orders a commander unit. When building command hand, treat this as though it has 2 pips. After friendly commander unit is issued an order with this card, choose 3 friendly units within range 1 of that unit. Each chosen unit gains a name or a dodge. Tactical planning is their 2 pip. It's essentially pinned down from Empire. After a friendly support or special forces unit performs an attack against a unit with a face-up order token, shuffle that token back into its order pool. And then for the 3 pip, leaders of the 501st orders 3 special forces or core units. Permanent effect of friendly units at range 1 to 2 of a friendly Anakin Skywalker and or a friendly Clone Captain Rex gain Indomitable. So, as we deferred to Imperial Remnants with Adam, I would refer to you, David, for kind of your initial thoughts, ideas about this.
Yeah, so like I said, I've only played it a couple times now, and I was pleasantly surprised overall. Like the courage value, everything is at least courage 2, and then you can give them Indomitable on top of that. So, very hard to just suppress them, even though let's make them get to the point of panicking. So that's pretty awesome. And, with all the rules changes, I know that a lot of people are worried about that, and 501st honestly can effectively nip that pretty easily if they want to. It is definitely, I feel like it has to be ARC Trooper centric, even at least the strike teams, if not, full on squads with the heavy, because it doesn't really have a lot else. And honestly, variety wise, it's pretty limited as far as even for Battle Force, I felt like is a little limited when I looked at it first. I was like, I had a lot of doubts about how a loaded ARC Trooper strike team would do. But, testing out last week, I I felt like it was a bit stronger than I expected with, the sharpshooter. You have the Pierce. If you put the heavies on it with the sniper, and you can make it fairly tanky with reliable from your phase 2s and, of course, Anakin's dodge tokens, amongst some other things. So there's ways to make it, I think, pretty strong. Whether or not it's good against Blizzard Force, I don't know that yet. I had to face it to see, and it's one of the reasons I'm on the cusp of either that or my Yoda Anakin list going into Worlds, the qualifier, I should say. But I do feel like 501st has options to take on most everything. Dark Troopers, I think a lot of people we saw at LVO, they did really well. It's my understanding that it avoided Blizzard Force in the successful list for the most part. But I do think it's a winnable matchup, whereas there are some lists out there, frankly, some armies that I don't feel like can handle all that upfront firepower that you'll see from that. And, Remnant and Dark Troopers in general, I should say specifically, they could also pose a problem. I think that was a big reason we didn't see them very much at Cherokee. In fact, I think the top Republic player at Cherokee was Anakin Padme, and didn't believe that 501st would be able to compete with Dark Troopers coming out on top of everything else. My list, I have Anakin, and I've got the ATRT for a little bit of impact. So I don't feel like one Dark Trooper is much of an issue at all. If they had two or more, though, it could be a problem. But again, it does have more variety than some people might think. But, at the same time, most people aren't going to want to go for the heavy impact. They just want the heavies on the snipers and the strike teams and stuff, which is awesome, but not going to be good against all the armor that's in the new meta. So with all that said, I feel like it could do well. I think that if you just have to build it with at least a little more impact, probably than even what I'm running, honestly. But I think that at the very least, I feel like you have a shot against most lists with it. I feel like my two matches I had with last week, it performed really well. I made mistakes, which cost me a game. And, I feel like that was more, player than the way the list ran. But otherwise, I feel like the list itself, on top of rolling pretty well, I felt like it gave me a lot of opportunities that previous lists I had made didn't necessarily have. So yeah, I'm all for 501st. I would definitely not say it's the strongest of them, but I also don't think it's the 50 worst as a lot of people were saying when it first came out either.
To be fair, it was a lot worse when it first came out. It's definitely come around now with all the points changes.
It did.
You did mention earlier, talking a little bit about Dark Troopers. What is your angle here versus Dark Troopers with 501st?
Anakin with Saber Throw is a huge one. My game versus Adam's the only time I faced Dark Troopers for, and that in itself, I don't even think he got into melee. That was enough because they don't get cover and stuff. Can really help because it's Pierce on top of the impact. So that's a big one. And I've got the ATRT, which has laser cannon, so I've got impact 3 on that. The list I ran, so that's my current list. Last week's list, I ran 2 Barks with the rocket on it, and I liked it. Of course, I love Barks, but at the same time, they do kind of run into issues depending. And so I feel like they could get shot up for the Dark Troopers might even, they can get in range of the Dark Troopers. So there's a give and take on that. But I do think that you have to run Anakin, with Saber Throw to really get them before they get you, because with 2 activations, armor, red saves and everything, they can definitely pose a problem. But honestly, I think, of course, in general, like the worst thing about doing with Dark Troopers is the fact that they can do any of the objectives on top of 2 actions. So sabotage the moisture vaps, they could go in your back line and in one turn completely tap one and undo everything you just did. So stuff like that I think is really big to watch out for. And so 501st can handle that, but it's very situational for sure.
Yeah. All right. How would you guys go about when you're facing down a 501st on the other side of the table? How would you go about beating it? Because I think my game plan personally would be to really try and split it apart, pull it apart, because they want to ball up even more than other clone lists do, I think. So by being able to pull them apart, you can really hamper their strategies and everything. Outside of that, though, I'm not quite sure.
I do agree with that. I think pulling them apart is the key there. I mean, I'd like to say that, like, you know, against a clone player, Pierce is your normal weapon. And the fact that you're running half your army as immune Pierce or impervious really sets 501st apart. You start, if their saves are holding up, they got good token sharing, you're throwing Pierce dice into them, and it's just not working. It's like throwing your head against a ladder. It just hurts. And it's senseless. Like, so I think the key is trying to split them. They don't want to have to be split, especially if they've got barks. Like, I think really it's trying to make them have to move, make them have to split in a way that they don't want to split, which is easier said than done. So
I'm curious as to, I agree with the splitting concepts. I think not only do clones just naturally not want to do that, but particularly in 501st, when you have vying command cards between your power-ups with Anakin that he really wants for all his keyword build-up, and then a lot of, at least from what I'm seeing, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, David, because I don't play clones, but the command cards are very leader-centric. You know, lead from the front, the order has to go to your unit leader, and then the tokens spread out from there. The leaders of the 501st, you know, friendly units at range 1 to 2 of friendly Anakin gain Indomitable. You know, good effects for sure, but I feel like, I don't know, just in your couple games, has that been awkward trying to manage Anakin's build alongside some of these other cards? That
it can be.
Play?
Yeah, and range 2 honestly isn't a huge hamper per se. If you're, what I thought was interesting, something else I realized is because they have tactical, I don't feel like I want to just sit there and shoot. I almost always want to move and shoot with my ARC troopers. So that means that, you know, if let's say I'm moving Anakin up and he's going to, I like defensive stance on him just because, you know, extra dodge is awesome. So let's say I move him up, I gain 2 dodges with defensive stance. That's his turn. And then, you know, I move my ARC troopers up, gain tactical, maybe take a pop shot. Like that, doing that, you can kind of like slow rolling, but you're still at least moving instead of completely hunkering down with this army. So actually, I felt like the tactical gave it a little more mobility than I expected.
Okay, it more is like a slow dive army to follow Anakin rather than, because I guess my initial thoughts were like, what if Anakin needs to do the Jedi thing, dive something, and then all of a sudden your command cards for the 501st are just like, well,
yeah, in my second match last week that happened, and you know, because I had Boba threatening my one VAP, and you know, I was kind of like split, like, do I make him go this way and that way and that? Yeah, Matt's sitting there all happy because that made the game very hard, and taking it away is different, but I'm a very defensive player though, and I hate, like, of all things, I'm usually proud of the fact that I usually keep my Jedi alive and try and play it safe with them. So I probably, you know, sometimes overdo it even, but you know, I usually have him sit back probably 3 rounds before I'm worried about having him jump into anything, unless of course I've got Dark Troopers that just, you know, shot across the field or something crazy. Like, generally speaking, I'm going to keep him moving with them, and again, because they have tactical, like that makes such a big difference on, do I sit here, aim, shoot, or, oh no, I can move into a better position, take a shot, and which is awesome, especially at range 2, because all of these ARC troopers shoot 1 black, 1 white, which, you know, white dice are white dice. They don't naturally surge, but the fact that you gain an aim on top of that, you might even be able to share it from someone else, can be a really big play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. The tactical makes them really mobile, so trying to split them is hard. I know in our game, David, I basically had to throw Boba at one of we were playing Vaporators, Sabotage the Vaps, and I had to throw Boba at one Vap and K2 and Cassian at the other, and just cause him to make a choice. Like, how am I going to handle both these threats? Because he was able to kind of put a ton of wounds on Boba, but Boba was in a position to maybe take away one wound off of the VAP, you know, turn 5, turn 6. And Cassian and K2 were like pretty much going to be able to touch the VAP. And so, okay, how do I manage these threats? And I was able to just split him enough, even though, I mean, he was dicing me to pieces. My units were falling apart. And so, like, how do I just basically had to split him on objective. So.
Yeah.
So
as always, play the objective first and foremost.
Yeah, so maybe a takeaway, if you're playing 501st, some of the objectives that are more concentrated, focused, and spread.
Yeah.
Okay.
And random thought that occurred to me in looking at my battle deck. I'm actually not afraid to play. With all that said, I'm not afraid to play Breakthrough, even against Blizzard Force per se, because I might hunker down for a round or two, kind of, but then I can just kind of move and get in position, and not have to worry about sacrificing decent shots and positioning and stuff to try and get to where I need to be. So again, like that's probably the one thing I love about the most, and what's made me fall for our troopers lately is just that being able to move them and still be able to pound people from distance is a really big advantage, in my opinion.
I think you like payload too. I mean, that ability to move with the payload and still get an aim and shoot things helps you a lot.
Yeah, so
a lot of people are scared to play payload though, but if they did, that's a good point.
Yeah, I do think we've beaten 501st to death as well now. So I think from here, let's move on to CIS, and if time permits, we'll finish off with our good old Shadow Collective. But as for CIS, they've got it's Separatist Invasion Force, so pretty much just kind of themed around invading a world. You got Dooku, Grievous, and a T-Series for your command slot, and then Maul for your operative slot. You've got Magna for your special forces, B1s for your core, Droidekas and Staps for your support, the AAT for your heavy. And then for their rank, for their force org chart, you must include one commander. You can only bring one as well. May include up to one operative unit. Each army may include up to 2 special forces units. You need to bring 4 to 8 B1s, which is kind of like where this Battle Force's main sticking point is. So you get the extra 2 units of B1s usually. You got up to 3 support units, and each army must include 1 to 2 heavy units. So you're bringing 1 or 2 AATs no matter what. As for their command cards, their 1 pip is just AI coordination, order support, or heavy unit. Each friendly unit that is issued an order using this card gains 1 standby token. Their 2 pip, unrelenting assault, orders 2 core units after a friendly core unit performs a range attack. If it spent 1 or more aim tokens, another friendly unit at range 1-2 may gain 1 aim token. It's coordinated fire pretty much on a 2 pip. And then their 3 pip, Unstoppable Advance, orders 3 core units. Each friendly trooper unit that is issued an order using this card may perform a speed 1 move. Just extra mobility. Helps a lot. Now, I know none of us play CIS too much, so I kind of feel bad because we always end up doing CIS players dirty a little bit by not going as in-depth on their stuff. But the main thing you're looking at with this, I feel, is always you're bringing 8 B1s, no matter what. You're always bringing 8 B1s because that's kind of like their big thing, which is... Well,
I mean, not everyone has 8 B1s, but most players are going to shoot for that, yes.
The part of the big part about this battle force is that you're shooting to bring 8 B1s because you're trying to just this is the horde.
Assemble this battle force. That's the biggest battle. That's how you defeat this battle force. Is you force everyone to buy it and make it.
Yes. Do you like assembling small, fragile, fiddly little things? Buy this battle force. It's for you.
For hours.
Yeah.
Hours.
It is.
For those who like a challenge.
So
look at you, Scott.
I'll say the AAT here is, as always, it still is going to be really good. AAT's always been good. I mean, I think... Go ahead, Adam. I think the big thing is just you're bringing bodies. Your strategy is bodies. It gets even worse when you start putting on like 6 PK worker droids for an additional 12 repairs on everything. It is... the only time I played against this list was against a 6 PK gun line with 2 Magnas in it and a T-Series, along with their tank and everything, at Gen Con. And I ended up having to do 17 wounds to the AAT before I actually killed it. So
I'm
it's
surprised you killed it, honestly.
I think you have to kill all those B1s before you can touch it.
I was playing Echo Base, so I had like Impact like 12 and like Ram 4 and Critical when I was rolling hot. So it worked out in that sense. But like, yeah, the big thing with this is attrition, because you're playing a horde. You're gonna win by attrition. So you're generally looking like 2 Magnas or Grievous / Dooku in there, along with everything else. What do you do here to beat this list?
Flamethrowers. I think. I mean, honestly,
spray. Yeah.
Yeah, spray is the answer. If you can bring, like, if you've got
Boba Fett,
either of your Boba Fetts, you got Din, you got the Snows with the Flamers. I think Flamer is the key, which is really a nice way to say that unless you have a way to handle mass core, good luck getting through Invasion Force. I mean, you're talking, if you bring the extra guys, you're talking like something like 6 or 7 health on each of the 8. And so you're just running a mass amount of bodies, and then you got to worry about the AAT and Dooku, and so it's just a lot.
So the one thing I do want to point out that I actually one of the games that I won against Separatist Invasion Force was actually I managed to kill their Dooku turn 2 because I was playing double air speeders at the time. So I was able to snipe out Dooku, and that actually helps immensely, because the big thing with this list here is that there's one unit that you're going to be able to bring that has higher than Courage 2, and outside of that, everything is going to be Courage 1, because Field Commander is not allowed in this battle force, so you can't stick a T-Series on your tank and have him be the new Courage bubble after your commander dies. So if you're able to snipe out that commander and you get everything else down to Courage 1, you can start split firing very effectively and actually panicking droids and everything, which can be actually pretty viable strategy nowadays.
I can see that. Yeah, just go.
Yeah, honestly, I think I feel like Staps right now too are kind of like unsung, or kind of like a dark horse almost. Like if you ran 3 of those AAT and managed to fit in 8 loaded up B1s, like that would be so much firepower coming at you. Because I know last time I faced Staps, they were honestly kind of like the deciding factor of I wasn't worried. Like I let the pikes do their thing from a distance and all that, but they're so good at getting your face. And I'm sorry,
can Staps go in Invasion Force? I don't think
Staps can. It's Staps. Oh, okay.
They can. Yeah, no, it's fine. But yeah, I feel like a triple Stap AT 8B1s would just be terrifying to face, honestly. That's just a lot of firepower that even could almost match Blizzard Force.
You can fit a T-Series, 8 naked B1s, 3 Staps with link targeting array, and an AAT with high energy cells and AP shells for 792. So you can probably mess around with that a little bit and drop it down. That is 13 activations as well. It's kind of gross.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
It's fun.
You probably end up dropping down to like 7 B1s and bringing a bunch of repair droids and whatnot. But yeah, it's something. It's something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, other strategy against CIS works really well. Things that deny orders, that kind of thing. As always, because
I say commander-wise, they're not going to have a lot of options if they only have like a T-Series, maybe, or especially if it's just Dooku, they'll have to go to like HQ uplink or something. Otherwise, their B1s are not going to shoot for anything.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be similar as Echo Base. I mean, you're going to want to kind of. It depends on what kind of version they're running. If they're just running an AAT and a bunch of B1s, they don't want to play bombing run. They don't want to play. They probably don't want to play recovers the supplies. They don't want to play things where they're going to have to do. Moving, picking up, interacting, that kind of thing. They just want to sit and shoot. So they're going to want to do things like key positions, intercept, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess we'll move on here to Shadow Collective after touching that, because it's like So Shadow Collective, the scum and villainy faction that some people see it as. It's still a battle force. So they've got access to only mercenaries, which is the fun part of their little docket. It's the Black Sun units, the Pike Syndicate units. You got Shadow Collective Maul and Mandalorian Super Commandos. Those are specific to Shadow Collective. And then as for their rank requirements, each army must include 1 to 4 commander or operative tokens. At least one unit must be commander. What I did breeze over the fact that they can bring Bosk and Cad Bane as well. So you could realistically run 3 operatives and commander with this list. You take 2 to 6 core units, 1 to 4 special forces, up to 3 support units, and up to 2 heavy units. So, and then for those support units, it was the swoop bikes and the AA5 speeder truck. This used to be very, very impressive for a list back in the day. Back in the day, being like 6 months ago.
Think it's a viable
it's still very, very good.
To do Maul and bust with a bunch of Black Sun, like it's still there, hasn't gone up in points hardly. So
I mean, you can still
think it's
run,
worth noting. I do think it's worth noting that out of all the battle forces we've talked about, this one has the most variety. Shadow Collective, this is why oftentimes people refer to it as its own faction, even though it's a battle force. I mean, you've got a lot of list archetypes you can run within this battle force.
There's like 4,
you've got,
I think.
No, you've got quad Mandos, you've got the heavy vehicle response where you've got 2 buses and 3 swoops, and you're just running Demoralize on all of it. You've got the Pike spam with Maul, you've got Maul with the bus, you've got Black Sun, spam. So there's a lot of variety that you can run within that. And then you've got Bounty Hunter lists that you can run with that too. And so you can kind of get into maybe you're running Garsax and Bosk and you're running a Headhunter list, or so I think there's a lot of variety that you can run within Shadow Collective.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Shadow Collective, as we kind of said, as Adam was saying, it's still really good. A lot of the lists are really good. I think probably you're still looking generally at Maul Pikes as being the good one, like the best one, I guess you could say right now, because you can still fit, like, I believe it's like 3 capos and Maul, and then 5 fully loaded Pike Syndicate foot soldiers with the disruptor and the capo in unit for 9 acts, and you can still fit all of that in. So it's like the list didn't really change all that much, and so it's just really, really gross. But I think nobody just wants to play them. That's pretty much what it boils down to right now.
Well, I think part of where Legion is right now is, there are good armies, and there's really, really good armies that, everybody talks about, and how do you beat it? And, oh, you're playing that. Like, oh, well, I guess you didn't want to play a skill game. You just wanted to play the army. And that used to be the Pikes, right? Like that's what you did, was you spammed Pikes, and people just, I think that there were people that, there are always going to be people that just want to play an army to win. And I personally think if you bought the models, you spent the time to do it, play how you want to play, right? Like this is a game. In my mind, it's for fun, but there's obviously the competitive aspect of it too. But I think those people got a lot of crap from.
Let's say that again.
Like, man, it's not fun.
This is a game for fun.
I think those.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
good point, Adam. This is a game for fun.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't say that. But
no one should never promote shaming someone for the list they brought or anything like that. That's not cool.
Yeah. But I do think it's less popular now because people got riffed on. And I think people are also getting that for playing Blizzard Force, for example, because it is good. Obviously, we've talked about it enough, and we've all made good points. Like, there are certain things out there that are just good right now. But I personally think, if you have fun playing it, play what you want to play. Your money, your game, your models.
Like I was tempted to play Blizzard Force a little bit myself, but I'm like, everyone else is playing it. So I just don't like playing what everyone else is at the time. To me, and the variety has gone down a little bit in my opinion with Battle Forces coming out. Because I love facing original lists, ones that necessarily aren't things you're going to see a lot of. Like those are ones I'm usually excited to play with and play against equally. So, I do think that Battle Forces did hurt that a smidge, but, and yes, there were, over half the field for the last two big tournaments. LVO and Cherokee had an Empire, with the chunk of that being either Remnant or Blizzard. But nonetheless, I agree that we don't need to look at it like a completely negative, oh, how dare you? The reality is people, it can be a lot of fun. People enjoy playing bikes and Vader and stuff, and I get that. But, yeah, there is the not so good kind of hard feelings of, man, this is just a little too good right now,
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Adam. I didn't mean to detract
you're
from
fine.
our talk
You're
about
fine.
Shadow Collective. I just thought that was a relevant thing as to why.
I think it's very relevant.
In my opinion, we don't see that as much anymore.
I would say, yeah,
not because it's not good, but I think there is an element of it's a little bit shady with the community right now.
No, I definitely agree.
Some feels bad.
I think it shouldn't be. Matt, I think that's a good point.
It's like Adam. PTSD for him,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fun lists to play in Shadow Collective. Honestly, the AAA5 triple swoops seems like a blast to play. Playing quad mandos, there's a lot of skill to that and trying to figure that out, and a lot of reward to that too. So I think that there is a lot of good depth of play to be tapped in Shadow Collective. There's just been kind of that rocky history, that people are keeping them out of it, that it shouldn't be.
I definitely think that the number one reason you don't see more Shadow Collective right now is because everyone remembers Pikes as the boogeyman. And that is still a very sour taste in a lot of people's in mouths and in their mouth. Jesus Christ. That is a very sour taste and all in their mouth still. So that's probably a big reason why you're not seeing play. But at the same time, if we're looking back at Cherokee and LVO, Shadow Collective has been doing very, very well. Because
yes,
at LVO, there was only 3 Shadow Collective lists in this 120-something person tournament. But the only games that they actually ended up losing were games that they played against Blizzard Force. And that specific Blizzard Force list was piloted by Dornbos. So, who's kind of one of the head honchos that most people see him as. Yeah. Or he might not be number 1, but I think he's up. He's top 3 for sure.
He's got to be up there, yeah.
But yeah, so they only lost to Kyle Dornbos, who is kind of the main guy that plays Blizzard Force, which speaks volumes for that because they weren't all playing the same Shadow Collective list either. There were 2 Pike Maul gun lines, but the other one I believe was a Quad Mando list. So it's the faction is very, very good and should be something that a lot of people, I'm surprised, have given up on.
Well, I don't think anyone gave up on it. I just think it's again kind of, yeah.
And a lot of people have taken a break. Maybe they have multiple factions. Maybe they just are whipping out a different faction for right now. And that's perfectly fine. I think that there's a lot of waters to be tested with Shadow Collective. I think out of the gate, there was just one list that was super strong over the others. And so, the different list archetype can do really, really well. They just haven't been played as much. But I do think, we can talk about specifically the one that I think we're all kind of dancing around right now is the Pike spam with Maul. Ways to counter that right now is high velocity. You can do that with AA5 or AAT. Snipers, the Rebel and Imperial versions have kind of dropped off a little bit, but you can, I think that's why they're doing as well as they are as in tournaments is there's not a lot of high velocity around. And really the other way is just how do you blast through all those dodges that they can get, because they've got turns where they'll start off the round with 3 or more dodges. And so how do you kind of, really kind of churn through all that? But I do think objective play is key as well. I mean, making them have to move and not have to, just sit and gunline it is not something they want to do, which is why I think Blizzard Force kind of puts them on their back foot, because they're going to end up with either breakthrough or bombing run, which they don't want either. And they really don't want to trace down a hostage either, although Maul can do it. He doesn't want to have to do that with Operative Vader right there.
Obviously, the other thing for kind of like more of a kind of killy kind of side of it is if you're able to kill the capos in the list, a lot of their effectiveness goes way down, because the capos are the way that they're getting those 3 dodges, because you get the independent dodge on the pikes. That's number one. Generally, the capos are getting their independent dodge as well, and they're taking that dodge and passing it via aid to those pike soldiers. So that's number 2. And then you can get a vigilance on them as well for number 3. So if you're able to kill those capos, you're cutting those 2 to 3 dodges down to 1 every turn. And they're not getting any extra aims or dodges mid-round as well, which
that's
helps
also
immensely.
You keep your pikes from panicking into oblivion.
That too.
Like pikes without that morale bubble are pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's like any other Courage 1 unit.
Especially because they're going to be sitting on, especially because they're sitting on a 1 to 2 suppression anyways because of danger sense. So it's like it becomes very easy to panic them.
Yeah, I'd also add on that the Shadow Collective version of Maul is super strong. He's I would argue he's not the top Jedi right now with all the changes. I feel like Vader arguably is, but he's definitely up there himself. He's got a lot of tricks, and outside of him, though, there's a lot that he can do, especially with his infiltrate and stuff. A lot of tricks you can use with him. So I think that he brings a lot of potential strong plays too to anything really. You add a pike gun line to all of that too, and it's a lot to deal with. Or Black Sun too. Like Black Sun is also very legit.
Yeah. How do you guys think the bus Shadow Collective lists are going to do now that people are bringing a lot more impact?
They're not going to feel,
because that was a pretty successful archetype for Shadow Collective for a while, was Maul being transported in the bus or Black Sun, popping out of the bus. But the bus featured prominently in a lot of Shadow Collective lists that did really well.
I think it's going to depend on your bus loadout. Yeah, I think the bus is actually going to do pretty well. I mean, Blizzard Force totes a ton of impact, so you got to be careful of that. But Dark Troopers don't shoot very well into armor. They've got critical 1, they got impact 2 if they get to range 2, which they can. But it's not a whole lot to take down the bus. And they're running double heavies, so it's just going to depend. You kind of want to be a little cagey. Don't let those. I mean, if you get 4 bike shots into the side of that bus, it's going to blow up. But I mean, you just kind of got to be careful.
I would say the more lists you got to worry about are the ones that are trying to counter Dark Troopers that are bringing like a ton of impact. Those are the ones that's going to suck the most into.
Impact 32.
Yeah.
Right.
And the bus is unfortunately white dice.
At Cherokee, wasn't there a list with like 3 HH-12s
there
or something like that, like 6 of them?
Yeah, 6 of them.
And Bosk. So that would rip through armor.
We are rapidly approaching the 2-hour mark. So I think now, right before we wrap up, predictions for Worlds, over under. We'll start with all the other non-Blizzard Force battle forces. How many do you think you're going to see? I'm going to say over under 3 for all of them.
3 Blizzard forces or 3
no
battle forces?
The non-Blizzard Force ones. I'm going to say over under 3 for each of them.
Over under for the whole thing?
Not total. So like 3 remnants, 3 Echo Base, et cetera. Over under that.
I think it'll be higher than that. I think we'll see a lot of 501st. I'd say probably. Are you talking about the whole event? So yeah, I'd say probably 10 501st.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking 200 plus people. That's a lot of pool.
Yeah, I'd argue that at the very minimum, I think Remnant's going to be popular, so I could see them being 10 plus even, depending on how things go, since there's going to be a lot of players. But I could see a few Echo Base. I think 3 is not unreasonable, but probably a little higher overall. But yeah, there probably only will be 3 to 5 Echo Base and Separatist Invasion Force. 501st, I think honestly, I kind of go the opposite way that Matt did on, since players seem to go away from that Cherokee, with Dark Troopers being a little bit of an issue for them, with certain builds at least. I feel like 501st are probably 3 to 5 range as well, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally don't think you see much 501st. I know it's had a couple showings recently in tournaments, but I don't know if people have the reps with it that they do for other things to bring it to Worlds. That's just me. I think if you're counting Shadow Collective, I do think we'll see more Shadow Collective there.
Yeah.
I think that's been kind of a sleeper that's still, as we talked about, still viable, but just isn't showing up too much. But I think when you put it down to like, hey, this is Worlds, and people want to bring the list that they think they're going to win with, I think Shadow Collective is going to make.
So hot take, but I figure if anything else is going to win Worlds that is non-Empire, Battle Force or not, Shadow Collective probably does have the best odds.
Yeah. All right.
Even if it's not a lot of players.
Really quickly, what about Echo Base and Separatist Invasion Force?
I think you'll see.
Yeah.
I think you'll see 6 Separatist Invasion Force and 8 Echo Base. Yeah, I mean, I think Battle Forces have been pretty strong since they've come out. People have been getting more and more reps with them, whether we see it in tournaments or not. I think they're going to make some showings.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
And then for the big bad Blizzard Force, what percentage of the list do you think are going to be Blizzard Force?
I could see it being 20 or so. Like, it wouldn't surprise me.
I was thinking 20.
I think 15.
Right.
Now, just to check, are we talking about the LCQ as well, or just Worlds itself?
15.
Okay.
I think Dark Troopers are the big bad now. I think they have come out swinging, and people are playing hot with them. So,
all right. So with that, I think we are at the end of our episode now. As always,
it's the end.
Thanks for watching. As always, feel free to reach out to us over at Indianapolis Garrison. Indianapolis Garrison at gmail.com. If you want to talk about lists, questions, etc. But as always, gentlemen, do we have any life advice to close out on?
I hear the Open's going to be fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. So
if the devices go to all the Opens,
do it.
Register.
Go to all the Opens.
Don't miss it.
Make sure to register for events. That's you heard it here first.